Our special guest today, the amazing Dan Otoole, part of the most successful sports broadcasting tandem this country has seen. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Coming up!
Welcome to the program. I think you're going to find today's guest very exciting and very enlightening. I know I will for sure. He is a native of Peterborough, graduate of Algonquin College, broadcasting stints in Vancouver, Fort McMurray, Edmonton, Toronto, Los Angeles. He worked at TSN for 16 years, the better looking half of the Jay and Dan tandem, 4 years coasting Fox Sports Live, recently launched the brand new podcast, Boomsies. Ladies and gentlemen, the man they call Toolsy, Dan O'Toole. Dan, welcome to the show.
I was all ready to launch that, but you beat me to the punch.
The Boomsies? Or the coming up?
Coming up!
Oh, yeah, there you go. Beautiful. So, Dan, you grew up in that mighty metropolis of Keene, Ontario. I know Keene. I've been there, and they have a very steeped baseball tradition there. What was it like growing up in Keene?
Well, I'll have to correct you. I'm sorry, right out of the gate, Joe Tilley. I was in Otoole, but I played my minor hockey in Keene. Yeah, so I played all my minor hockey in Keene, and you mentioned baseball. I will tell you this story. My father, who I don't ever remember playing baseball, but he was playing in a slow pitch tournament in Keene, which, if you know the area well, is right next to the Keene Arena.
Yep.
And my dad was coming to the plate. We were over playing on the playground, and some ne'er-do-well child decided it was a great idea to drop a 20-foot crowbar from where it was leaning on the play set onto the ground. Needless to say, I was standing beneath that crowbar. So it fell on my head, and as blood poured from my head and people caught it in cups, they're like, hey, your dad's got to finish his at bat. So he finishes it at bat and then drove to the hospital in Peterborough with blood gushing out of my head. So those are my baseball memories from Keene.
So your dad got a base hit.
I don't know. I don't recall.
First, stole second. was sacrificed to third. Then somebody else got a base hit, drove him home, and then he drove you to the hospital. And
then there was a pitcher change, I'm sure. And then they're like, no, he'll be fine. But I think he's bleeding out. No, he'll be fine. We need this run.
Well, Dan, I have to say the crowbar in the head explains everything, buddy.
Exactly. But I did play my minor hockey in that arena. And I played in the days of horsehair pads. And if you've ever seen these, horsehair pads by the end of the game weigh 20 pounds more than they did at the start of the game. So those. I did not become a professional because of horsehair pads. If I had current modern day pads, I'd be the next Alan Bester.
Okay, there you go. So you're talking about the goaltender pads. Yes, horsehair. Yeah, I remember those days. I don't even think horsehair was invented when I played. But I did play goal for 1 year. We had a good team, so it was very boring. So, how did you graduate from goaltender with horsehair pads to a broadcasting career? What made you want to decide to be a sportscaster?
I was like one of those kids back in the day where I'd be watching Hockey Night in Canada with Dick Irvin on the call. And then with Bob Cole, I would put the game on mute and do the play-by-play myself. And if I wasn't doing that, then I'd be playing with my my WWF characters and being Mean Gene Okerlund and recording all this on a cassette tape. And that's how I decided I'd love to do this. And in high school, we had the chance to do co-op program. I tried co-op as a teacher, and I'm like, I cannot do this. I don't have the patience. So then I did my next co-op at the Trent Radio, which is the Trent University in Peterborough's radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down behind the mic and I'm like, this isn't like working at all. And that's where I got into broadcasting. And that's what started it all, when I figured out that it didn't feel like work.
And the WWE never called.
No, Mean Gene, well, he did it forever. So he had that position well locked up.
There are no openings. Okay, so tell us about going for, like, I did the same thing. I was campus radio station, thought this is pretty good. I'd love to make a living doing this. Tell us about landing the first gig. How'd that happen?
I was in college in Algonquin and Ottawa. I was rejected by 2 other colleges. I was rejected by Loyalists in Belleville and Fanshawe in London. In college, you gave them your money and they accepted you, but that wasn't the case. So finally got into Algonquin and Ottawa. A couple of months into my second year, a job posting went up on the board, and it was for an airborne traffic reporter in Vancouver. This is where I remind you, I was going to school in Ottawa, and I'm from Peterborough, and I'd only been to Vancouver once in my life. Yet I applied for this job with Skywards Traffic. So they did the airborne traffic reporting for these radio stations for free. The caveat was, well, we got to read a tagline for like Jiffy Lube or whatever. So it was a brilliant idea. They hired me, and then I ventured out in our pilot's car because he had to fly the plane out to Vancouver. I went out in his like 84 Toyota Tercel across Canada. That car had no radio. It had no heat. It had no speedometer. I don't know why he wanted it out there, but I got it there. And that was my first job, flying around Vancouver, giving airborne traffic reports, and it did not go well. I'm so glad social media wasn't there, because the station would get calls. They're like, has this guy ever driven on a road here? It's the low heat highway, not the log heat. So I was getting road names wrong. It was just abysmal. But that's what I did for 501 flights in Vancouver, because I did morning and afternoon drive. I did that 501 times without crashing in the plane. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, like my first week in Toronto, coming from out west, I had to talk about somebody who was from Kapuskasing. And Christine Bentley was sitting beside me, and she turns around, she goes, Kapuskas? Do you mean Kapuskasing?
That's like when I was doing news on the college radio station at Algonquin. I listened to an old tape recently, and I talked about a fire or someone breaking into a store in Kelowna. That's Kelowna.
Kelowna.
Yeah.
We used to go there every year in the summer. Kelowna.
That's right.
Right, just north of Penticton.
Yeah.
Penticton. So you go from Vancouver to Fort McMurray. Not what you'd regularly considered a good career move, but in this case, it sounded like it was.
That's right. I got back into doing play-by-play because when I was in college in Ottawa, I got to do Ottawa 67's play-by-play. So I went to Fort McMurray and did the play-by-play for the 2000 Royal Bank Cup winning Fort McMurray Oil Barons, a team that Scotty Upshaw, who had a nice NHL career, was a part of. But you go to Fort McMurray, and it's the home of the oil sands, and you're making radio money. So you are the lowest paid person in the town, because I knew pipe fitters that were 20 living at home making like $150,000 a year. And I thought I was rich because I was making $2,000 a month at the radio station. I'm like, I'm in the money now, baby.
Yeah, that's twice what I made my first gig in Red Deer, by the way. So that's.
Oh, I didn't tell you though. My airborne traffic reporting job, I made $14,000 a year.
Oh, right. That was my kind of money. Yeah. So okay, so you're in Fort McMurray doing the gig there, but then you end up going to Edmonton, I believe, after that, or there was the gig in Edmonton via Fort McMurray. How did that come together?
That's right. So they had it was called a stringer reporter, because Fort McMurray was a growing metropolis. By the way, when I took the job in Fort McMurray. This is pre-internet. I got a map, so I knew where I was moving to. On the map, it just had an arrow that said to Fort McMurray. I moved to a town that wasn't on the map. So while I was there, I got to know the guy, CJ Phillips, who ran the Shaw cable station. And I'm like, I'd love to do some TV. He goes, here's a camera. You go shoot it. I'll help you edit it. So I put together a few shows. I interviewed hockey players. I interviewed politicians. And then I sent that demo tape to Edmonton because their stringer reporter did stories from Edmonton, which they'd insert in the Edmonton newscast. So they'd have Fort McMurray covered. And I sent that off and they hired me. I lied, said I'd worked a camera before when in fact I hadn't. And then they eventually had to teach me. I got the old CTV vehicle that I got to drive around town. So I did morning radio, play-by-play for the Oil Barons, and did reporting for CFRN, the CTV station in Edmonton. And while I was doing that, I sent that tape off to CKVU in Vancouver, which was getting set to launch City TV. And the gentleman there, George Froelich, he said to me, get a year's experience. I'll call you in a year. So I got a year of experience doing TV. He called me a year to the day, said, did you get the year's experience? I said, yep. He goes, okay, well, do you want a job in Vancouver? So I got to go to Vancouver to help launch City TV with Moses Znaimer roaming the halls in those early days.
That's a good move up for sure. Definitely. What was it like working in City in Vancouver? And what made you decide that
it was great?
You want to come back out east?
When TSN called 9 months into that gig, I guess Farhan Lalji, who was the TSN reporter, the people from Toronto called him and said, hey, anyone out there on TV that we should hire maybe? And he gave them my name. So Mark Milliere, who was the executive in charge of hiring at that time for TSN, I still remember to this day, my phone was blinking at my little sports desk at City TV, and I pick it up, and it was a message, said, Dan, this is Mark Milliere from TSN. If this is on speakerphone, please take it off. And then mention how he wanted to talk to me about coming to Toronto. So I called him back, and he said, hey, we'd love to hire you. And I was still fresh in Vancouver. This is the kid that just came from Fort McMurray. So I'm like, I'm in the big city. I get to go out with my friends every night for dinner. I only have to do the 6 o'clock sports. I get weekends off. I'm like, this is the greatest job ever. So I said, thanks for the interest. I politely declined. And then this went on for a few more phone calls. And then he got Blake Price to call me, who had moved from Vancouver to work in Toronto, was an anchor there. And he said, hey, I totally get it, but this is a great place to work. Got James Duthie to call me. So they put the full court press in, thinking I was a brilliant negotiator, when really I just wanted to stay in Vancouver. Eventually I said, okay, I'll make the move back to Ontario, where I'm from. And luckily I did, because about 2 months after that, City TV, where I was working, laid off 95% of the people that were working at the station. So I made the correct call.
Right. A couple of times that's happened in my career too, where I had an opportunity to go someplace and then the next thing you know, they stopped doing that particular show. Yeah. So that was a good career move for sure. So tell me, how do you get hooked up? How did the combination you and Jay come about?
So this all goes back to Blake Price. So I got there. Blake Price was doing the 10 o'clock SportsCentre with Darren Detition. Jennifer Hedger was paired with Jay Onright on the 2 a.m. Eastern edition, which was live at 2 at that time. Blake and his wife needed some extra help with their kids because they had a young growing family, and both their families were back in BC. So he decided to move back to his home province. So at that time, they moved Jennifer Hedger off the show with Jay Onright up with Darren Detition. And I got the call again from Mark. He's like, okay, once this NHL lockout's over, because the lockout happened in 2003 or 4, he said, once the lockout's over, you're going to be paired with Jay, because at that time I was on weekends with a revolving group of people. One of them was your former coworker, Sunil Joshi. I did a lot of shows with him. I did shows with Holly Horton, with Lisa Hillary. So I got the call to be paired with Jay for the single reason being Blake Price moved back to BC. So if Blake hadn't moved back to BC, I would never have been paired with Jay. So that's how it all happened. And Jay always said, he's like, I was working with Jennifer Hedger and then they gave me you. And I'm like, you're welcome.
Well, you know what? It was a combination that worked out pretty well. Actually, Vic has got some a clip standing by of some of your work with Jay, just in case for those at home who've forgotten what that combination looked like. Vic, can you run that clip?
My hands are so small, tiny little hands. Producer Tim thinks we look like Beavis and Butthead. Can't believe the Miami Heat lost again on
Ooh, look at that
Tuesday
haircut
night.
on Jay.
I hope they don't.
That looks
cry
like a toupee.
again. I hope I don't cry.
Oh no. No, don't do it. No.
They just wanted the chance to play together. They're friends. They're friends and they wanted to play together.
So I've been there before. The waterworks, the uncontrollable sobbing, the hysterics. My 2 children don't do any of that. Instead, it's a daily occurrence for the man-child I work with. This video from the day Onright was told he had to actually work 2 days in a row. Top 10 crime moments in sports.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Good times for sure. Now I want to ask you, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think when you look back at that right now?
So I've mentioned this on my current podcast, how I actually cringe when I see those old clips. The reason being, we were just developing our chemistry at that time, and my acting, if you can even call it that, was abysmal. And I point to our last 4 years of shows from 2017 to 2021 as our best shows we've ever done. That's when we moved back from LA to Toronto to work back at the network. And Jay agrees with me. Like Jay and I are very close friends to this day. And he agrees that those, because it's like with any profession, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more polished you become. And at this point in our lives, Jay and I can finish each other's sentences. So I know how to tee them up. And Jay always gave me a great little antidote on, not antidote, anecdote. I'm not very good with that. Anecdote, yes, on how to make the show work. This is when we first started being paired together, and he said a line, and I added in like, yeah, that looks like fun. And during the commercial break, he's like, if it's not funny or if it's not needed, just don't say anything at all. And I always remember that, because a lot of the times it's tough just not saying anything, just letting the moment breathe. And that's what we learned how to do. We were not uncomfortable with silences, which a lot of young broadcasters are. They're like, oh, there's silence, we can't have this, when that's what you need for the joke to come across and for the people at home to get it. So we discovered all that over our many years together, which started in 2004 and then went all the way to 2021.
Right. You didn't need like a Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon type of scenario where.
Correct, sir.
That's a good one. Yeah, gotcha. So before you guys left for LA, because I want to talk about that, they put together a little compilation for you on TS. I want to ask Vic, our producer, to roll that.
First big news of the day, a major acquisition, actually make that a major reacquisition. TSN is proud to announce that Jay Onright and Dan O'Toole are returning to the TSN fold.
Blockbuster deal, Jay and Dan back on TSN.
We get to come home.
Yay.
Heck yeah. We're going back to Canada.
We're excited. We were getting deported anyway, so it's great.
Did you catch any of the World Cup Friday? Can't get enough of that vuvuzela. Zayla.
You know who else can't be beat? Jason Seaver from Growing Pains.
Mike, Boner's at the door.
Dion put up.
That's a good one. I always like
yeah,
boners at the
I
door.
got that. Yeah. Boners at the door. I got that mixed up. So that was the compilation they put together when you were coming back to TSN
Yeah.
After the stint in LA. But I want to talk before that about the stint in LA. How did that gig come about, and what was the process there?
So during our time together, the Wall Street Journal, of all papers, wrote an article because they had a Toronto-based reporter who watched SportsCentre every night, and he wrote an article, "Why can't American SportsCentre be like Canada's?" And he wrote an entire article about Jay and I. This landed on the desks of Fox executives. So while Jay and I were in London for the 2012 Summer Olympics, we got a call from Jacob Ullman, who was a Fox executive, and he said would ask if we'd be interested in going to Fox as they helped launch Fox Sports 1, a new sports channel in the States. And we said, yeah, we're open to any offers. And we talked for a couple of weeks, and then nothing. So I emailed them, and they said, yeah, we decided to go in a different direction. I'm like, oh, well, that was fun while it lasted. And then 2 weeks after that, they said, nope, we want to go in the original direction. And then we had to find agents, and then our agents worked out a deal. And then we moved to Fox in LA from 2013 to 2017. We signed a 4-year deal there. So all because of one article in the Wall Street Journal, we landed in LA at the juggernaut that is Fox. And what an experience. We worked on the Fox lot where they shot like Modern Family. They shot so many shows. There's like actual sound stages. There's a fake New York street where they shoot shows every day. You drive onto a working Hollywood set with palm trees. And I'm like, is this the greatest gig ever? And we had no affiliation with Fox News, so we didn't have to deal with any people being mad at us. We were on our own island out there launching a new network. The only problem we soon discovered was no one knew how to find the channel.
Uh-huh. Well, they eventually, I know that was the whole problem with the thing not marketed that way in terms of how to find this place. But I mean, but here you are in the largest market on the planet, and you and Jay. Now, here's you're from your standpoint. Here's this guy from Keene, or just outside of Keene, and who is rejected from Fanshawe College and Loyalist College, and here he is called into work for in the largest market in the world for a brand new station. I mean, what was that like for you?
It was amazing. We didn't know what to expect. We were, without admitting it, nervous walking into this place where there was superstars working, but it is hands down one of the greatest companies I've ever worked for. From the wardrobe department to the stage crew, there was no expense spared. Is that the right expense? Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Because you would walk into work. We each had our own dressing room. We'd walk in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops. Our suits would be hanging up for the show. The suit, the tie, the belt already in the pants, your socks, your shoes, because their mindset was, we want you to concentrate on nothing except having a great show. So one of the things was to have a wardrobe department where all your clothes were there. You'd go onto the stage and there'd be a crew of about 6 people just there to move things, to position set pieces. And this is something that's both of those things are not present in Canadian television. You don't have wardrobe departments. You don't have crews to move sets. You have maybe 2 camera people on the floor. That's it. So just seeing the enormity of what went into TV production on the American side of things blew our minds. And producers, that's the one thing. Things are overproduced because you'll have about 20 producers on one show, when back in Canada, you'd have one. So just being a part of that and seeing the inner workings of American television was eye-opening and something that I will never forget, and it's an experience that I would never trade for anything.
So you didn't have to go at 1:35 as you're getting ready for your show. Go down and put your own makeup on, or
No, no.
and I
And the other thing,
remember
when you're working at Fox, you're walking down the halls and you see Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt. Oh, then yeah, we work with him. We worked on a show with Donovan McNabb, Gary Payton, Gabe Kapler, who's now the manager of the San Francisco Giants. All these people just roaming the halls, and it was just like you didn't bat an eye when if you saw one of those people walking around a studio in Canada, you'd be like, oh,
whoa.
this is pretty amazing. This guy's here. But it was just something that was happening every single day when we went into work.
So you guys got a chance to do all kinds of great interviews with all the top sports figures in the world. I mean, you were interviewing Conor McGregor before his fight with Nate Diaz, and I think we got some of that.
Oh, yes. I love this.
Great. We have a great relationship. Good business. He's a smart man. And we have a great relationship.
And he's a businessman like you, so he must know you showing up late, that gets people talking. And then what happened at the end of the news conference, that gets even more people talking. And then that all translates into more pay-per-view dollars.
That sounds about right.
So
you didn't get into it
good.
when they went back and forth. So that's Conor McGregor before anyone knew who Conor McGregor was. And they went at each other in that interview. And a year or two later, Nate Diaz came to do that show in that room. And he walked in. He said, "It's you guys," because we really pitted them against each other. And he's like, "You're the guys who were laughing during the interview. I thought you were laughing at me." We're like, "No, we were just nervous and we didn't know what to do. So we were laughing." And we thought Nate Diaz was going to beat the crap out of us.
What was it? I mean, what was your thoughts? I mean, the way that Connor handled that particular part of it was like, you know, pretty. He was kind of an off the rails type of guy anyway, right? So you're interviewing guys who are a little bit, out in left field sometimes, I guess. But what would go through your mind when you're talking to a guy like that?
Well, our first initial instinct was, well, we need them to give us some juicy stuff. So we would prod them, and we got better at as we went along. The thing that comes to mind when I see that clip, Conor McGregor would never wear what he's wearing in that interview now. And Conor, when we first got to Fox, he was walking around. He was part of our UFC show because it was a nightly show in which they'd have analysts on. He was an analyst on that show, walking around with a cane because he had a severe leg injury, which prevented him from fighting. So again, no one knew who Conor was. So if we knew at that moment that guy we were sitting there interviewing would become one of the highest paid athletes in the world, I wonder what we'd ask differently. It's definitely something that comes to mind. But our Conor interviews, we would get excited when he became bigger and bigger, knowing, okay, someone's going to tune in for these. So we knew how to poke him. He got better though. Despite the fact that you probably don't think he handled his rage later, he got better at interviews, so he wouldn't fly off the handle as easily in those interviews in which they're in a different room in a different city doing this. So we got him when he was still raw.
So, what was your favorite interview to do when you were there, or certainly among the favorites?
Easy. Norm Macdonald. We somehow landed him for that show, which we were originally in a huge, like, it was almost like an airplane hangar of a studio. And then when everyone got laid off from the show, they're like, well, these guys still have a year and a half left on their contract, so we better find something. So they stuck us in a storage closet and built a studio. So it was a very intimate little show. And Norm Macdonald came on that show. So seeing the great Canadian legend who is now passed, and meeting him and seeing how he is just, without trying, a funny human, that was the icing on the cake. Just interviewing him. He was just a very nice person, very genuine. And that was where we hit the peak of our interviewees.
He was an amazing comedian, Norm Macdonald, one of the funniest guys, and just like you said, the
If you get a
personality that
chance
guy
and you
had,
haven't seen it, look at his last stand-up he did on Letterman's last show. So good. He breaks down at the end, thanking David for all the time that he ever allowed him on his show. So Norm Macdonald, last appearance on David Letterman's show. That's on YouTube.
So I want to talk about leaving TSN and what that was like. You returned to TSN, with all the fanfare, and then your exit from TSN. What was that like for you going through that?
Well, all my suits are still there. When are you supposed to get? And everything in my desk is still there. When am I supposed to get that back? So yeah, it was shocking. I woke up to an email one day, and it was a strange email because I never get emails from bosses, and it was like you're requested on a business meeting at 2:00. And I opened this email at 9 a.m. I'm like, first off, why do I have to sit around and wait? Like nothing's going to get done. You're just stuck in your own home thinking about the possibility of being fired. And then I knew I was being fired or laid off. I was laid off. When I sent the email heading to a buddy who had been laid off the previous week. He's like, I got that same email. It's not good. So knowing that was coming and that I had that phone call later in the day, it was a kick in the gut, of course. And yeah, what do you do? If my entire life I've worked at gas stations, car washes, worked on farms, and I'd never been laid off. So to be laid off for the first time at the age of 45, when you, the previous 4 years, had put together your greatest collection of work in your chosen profession, that's where it was the real slap in the face, where it's like, but our show was good. But when the henchman comes, you can't really stop the guillotine from falling.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, so I mean, when we got retired in November 2017, a lot of the Bell layoffs tended to come the month before Christmas, but yours came a week after Bell Let's Talk, which is a story in itself, which I want to touch on. But so, but they gave us the option at that particular time, there being a series of layoffs November after November. And they said, well, they're getting rid of the sports department from coast to coast is what they told us. And so there is no need for sports because we have TSN, but the thing is, local sports and TSN are two different things, as you know. But anyway, they gave us the option to either, when they called us into human resources, to either, take a check, leave now, or work the last 6 weeks and say goodbye to our fellow employees and say goodbye to the viewers and all that other stuff. That wasn't, you weren't allowed to do that. I mean, that was kind of a hard thing, I'm sure. Tell us what you went through when that happened.
Yeah, when you do a show the night before and then you wake up and then you realize that was your last show. Luckily, it had a couple funny clips, and the clip that I posted, I'm like, well, this was my last ever on camera. So when you're appearing on camera and introducing a highlight package, whatever that's called an on camera. And I mentioned producer Tim, my longtime producer who we'd had since 2004, who even moved to LA with us. I mentioned him in that on camera, not even knowing it was our last on camera. And he and I were both being laid off on the same day. It was very fitting. So, I'm actually kind of glad I didn't have the goodbye tour, because going into that workplace, knowing you're one day closer to you not working there, I think I would just been filled with resentment and bitterness. So I'm kind of glad that the Band-Aid was just ripped off in a way. I didn't want to be laid off, but the way it happened, I didn't have to sit there. It's like sitting in a pot of boiling water and you're like, well, it's getting warmer. It's getting really hot now. I didn't have to deal with that. Thank goodness. Did it not drive you crazy? you did the farewell tour.
Well,
Did
yeah, but the circumstances were slightly different. Like I'd been there for 33 and a half years. And now, cutbacks and cutbacks and cutbacks. We had a sports department of 15 people at one time, right? When we used to do Sports Beat Today. And so we had 15 people, and then there's fewer as time goes along. And then now we're down to two. It's Lance and I, between the two of us doing, 14 shows a week.
Mhm.
So 7 shows for Lance, 7 shows for me, and then plus they're expecting us to do some reporting as well. And here I am working weekends after 33 years of not working weekends, or 32 years of work not working weekends. So it was coming to a point where I was kind of like, you know what? I went to talk. My wife and I went to talk to our financial guy, and he asked him how we were set up financially and how the pension situation looked. And he says, "Man, you're good." He says, "You're good to go." So we were thinking of going anyway. But he said, "But the way things are going, why don't you hang in for a while and see if they offer you a package?" And they offered me a package. So when I was in the human resources room, I'm doing a happy dance, really quietly to myself. But I'm making comments that they could tell, obviously, that this wasn't a devastating move for me. But, it's a little bit different when you're, like you said, you're at the peak of your career. You just come off, 4 years, you're the best work you've ever done. And then, boom. However, and well, no, I shouldn't say however, I think this had a big effect on you. And I know you shared, publicly before about the problems you've had, and I've had, with alcoholism. And so, this sort of was a kind of where your bottom would come. Is that what you'd say? Would you agree?
Yeah, so I was laid off on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Super Bowl Sunday was obviously on the Sunday. So when my kids got picked up on Friday, usual schedule, I was left alone for the first time, and that's where, bottles of wine turned into many bottles of wine, and the weed came out, and then I see now from a lens that's not clouded. Friends and family were very concerned for me because on Saturday, Jay all of a sudden just shows up at my house. I'm like, "Oh, that's great! I've got a visitor." So Jay and I hung out all day. It's because they wanted to make sure I didn't harm myself on purpose or not on purpose. So he hung out with me, and then just before he left, another friend showed up. I'm like, "This is amazing. I've got like a party in my own house, and I didn't even plan it, not knowing these people were there to ensure my well-being." So then I went
An
to my
intervention.
friend's Super Bowl. Yeah, exactly. But no, as you know, with someone who's going down that path, the last thing you want to do is you should stop, because that person's going to say, "F you, I'm going to triple my
Yeah.
consumption." So they just let me be, made sure I was safe, showed up to my friend's Super Bowl party. And that's where I don't remember anything past the halftime show. And all this time, I'm thinking, okay, I've worked nights for the last 20 years. So when I don't have my kids and I'm not working nights, this is going to be scary. I compare it to say I'm put on the top of a ski jump in the Olympics. I've skied before, but the chances of me landing that are 2%. And I said, this is going to go sideways in a hurry, because I was already on weekends when I didn't have my kids over consuming and just not being responsible. I was still living a normal life, but I was consuming too much booze and weed. So when I woke up in my friend's house on that Monday morning after the Super Bowl, I had a gash on my head because I'd fallen and hit my head on his fridge, and they were checking on me the entire night. And speaking with them now, they're like, "Yeah, we were really worried for you, and we did not take our eyes off you." So I woke up Monday and I said, "This has to stop." So I said to my buddy, I'm like, "I'm going home and I'm not drinking today." Guess what? As soon as I got home, I cracked a White Claw. I'm like, "Well, that didn't work." And then I said, "No, I need help." I reached out to friends and family. They took the bull by the horns. My cousin drove all the way from Ottawa. He pretty much just took me hostage. He said, "You're coming with me all the time." All the while they were finding a place to enter me into a rehab facility. The next day I was in, because they knew if they didn't do it quickly that I would find a way to probably get out of it and say, "I don't need help. I'm fine." That was just it's not going to be that bad. So they took the ball and ran with it, got me into rehab, and that was on February 9th, 2021. So February 8th, when I got home after the Super Bowl party, was my last drink. And I told the story on the podcast. So my cousin and I are here emptying out all my booze, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to dump it out. I'll bring it to my mom's, because we were passing through my hometown on the way to his house. So we go there with all this great bourbon, and I'm like, Mom, we got to do a shot. This is my last ever drink. She goes, I don't do shots. So I forced her to do a shot. I'm like, we're doing it. So we did a shot of bourbon, and now I think back of it, I'm like, oh my God, if I did that right now, I would think I would vomit, just the heat going down. So did a shot of bourbon with Mom as my last drink. And yeah, that was the last alcohol I consumed in my life to this point. So February 9th, 2021, February 8th, 2021.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dan. Congratulations on a year. That's
Thanks,
fantastic. Yeah, I know. It's an awesome life, isn't it? It's been 29 years and change for me. So it's a pretty cool,
And you mentioned,
good life. And I wouldn't trade
I
it.
have talked about it on my podcast, and I'm like, do I keep this a secret? Because I went to rehab, and I'm like, whoever wants to admit that? It was like, first off, the first week, I'm like, how did I ever get here? How did I get to this place? And if you go to one of those facilities, like, these people don't know what they're talking about. But I got the tools that I needed and have used them ever since. So I thought I would keep that in the closet and never reveal that secret. But now that I've been out, now that I've been sober this period of time, and I talk about it with people at parties, like, you're probably the same. You go to a party with friends, and at least one of them before the end of the night will come over and say, so what's it like? Like you're trying to sell them on a new religion or something. Like, so is it good? And I don't want to be too exuberant, because I'm like, it's amazing. It's the best. So I said, I need to bring that and just put that in the light in the podcast. And since then, I have had so many people reach out and say, Dan, you telling your story showed me that it's possible, and it's something I need to do. And they'll reach out and they'll say, I haven't had a joint in 15 days, or I'm like, I haven't had a drink in 7 days. And I say, that is awesome. That is unreal. Just wait until you go further and further into this, and the clarity gets even better. Then you realize how our minds tricked us into, no, you need this to have fun. Because that was the one thing. Going into rehab, I talked to a buddy. I'm like, I'm never going to have fun again. And he got me on the phone with someone who had just left rehab 3 months prior. And he said, Dan, I said the same things, and I could not have been more wrong in my life. So I always remember that. And I mention that to people when they reach out. I say, our minds trick us into thinking, no, you need booze to have fun, when it's just clouding you from reality and not living in the moment. And when you find that clarity, you are so present, and it's a game changer.
This disease lies to us. And that's why, for whatever reason, it's a disease that wants me dead or insane and won't stop till I get there. And it lied and lied and lied. And I would quit daily, and my car would end up at the bar, and I'd go, how did that happen? I used to blame the car out of mind of its own, like Christine, right?
Or you reward yourself. You're like, well, I haven't drank for 5 days. And then you'd reward yourself with a 3-day bender.
Well, me, it was 5 hours, but that's it. It's, you talk about not the disease telling me it's not going to be any fun, and my life is over as I know it, fun as I know is over. And that was the stuff that was going through my mind. But what I learned was, I've learned what fun is, and I've learned to enjoy it. And when I have really good times, I remember it, and I remember exactly what was going on. And you develop relationships with other human beings that are deep and meaningful and have and are awesome. So there's so
And you
much.
know
But
what else I
I
found?
yeah.
And I always point
Mhm.
this out. Weed and alcohol have a great marketing department because for all of our lives and in every movie and every show, it's, oh, you had a tough day. Here, have a drink. Oh,
Yeah.
you want to relax? Here, have a joint. When I eliminated those things from my life and I found out they were causing 99% of all my anxiety,
Mhm.
they weren't taking away stress, they were adding stress. So I don't know how I believed the marketing campaigns that long, but yeah, I soon discovered it. I'm like, wait a second, that didn't take away my anxiety. It gave me anxiety.
Well, for some people it's okay, but for me it's not. It's like there was my kids went to counseling many years ago, and somebody explained it to them like this. With most people, they're like this, and when they drink or use drugs, they're like this. An alcoholic or addict is like this, and when they drink or use drugs, they're like this. So I believed that I needed this to exist. I needed this to function, and I needed this to have fun, and yada 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 yada. And having been sober for 29 years, I can tell you the exact opposite is true. And in life, I didn't know how to live until I got this, and everything about my personality that's allowed me to be the best I can be, I believe, has improved as a result of
And,
being
and
sober
not to
one
mention,
day at a
Joe,
time.
so 390 days sober now, and sitting with a buddy the other day, and he's like, how much do you think he's saved? So I totaled it up, and like I went like low estimate. That should be the other thing. You save a crap load of money. Oh my goodness. I had to get the calculator out a couple times. I'm like, this can't be right. And this guy's an accountant. He's like, nope, that's the right figure. It was just, I'm like, wow. So that alone, you want to save for retirement. Stop drinking.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So I want to talk about Boomsies because Boomsies is great, and I've watched several episodes now. Boomsies, yes, and and producer Tim is involved, which is awesome. Tim's been with his sidekick with you
That's
all the way
right.
through, and then it's yeah,
He's the
all the way
producer I
through.
mentioned we've
How
had
did he?
for 20 years.
Great. And why did he ended up going to LA with you? How did that happen?
Because they wanted our producer to come with us because as I mentioned, Fox was very heavy on producers. So they're like, yep, he needs to come along. He came back to Canada with us. He got laid off the same day as us. And I explained producer Tim and I's relationship on my podcast. It's one of those relationships where sometimes we don't talk for 6 months when we were at work because he would say, no, you can't say that. I'm like, yeah, I can. And then we would just butt heads. So when I started in talks to start this podcast, I'm like, I need someone who's not just going to say yes to everything I want to do. And I guess I got to ask producer Tim if he wants to come along. And it was the right decision because you don't want to be surrounded by yes men or yes women. You want someone who's going to challenge you and tell you can't do something. And then you can have a conversation on if that was the right decision or not. And it just doesn't happen. And then you put something out on a podcast and you're like, yeah, I guess we shouldn't have done that. Now producer Tim is our safety valve. So yeah, Tim's along. And we also got to Andrew Zwarich, who used to work at the previous network. What the hell was that name of the place I used to work for?
Some letters
RSN?
involved, I think. Yeah.
Whatever it is. He left that network to come work on this. So to have someone willingly jump into a new project, that gave me the confidence to know that we potentially had something. So yeah, Boomsies was born in my basement in Orono, Ontario.
There we go. And so we got a clip from Boomsies. There's a character that visits your show, and on Boomsies, and his name is Ron. We want to let's
Okay, let's see this. If you're watching the video portion, Ron is checking things out. He's kind of like the operations manager. He comes like, okay, we're recording on that. Lighting's good. And beverages are here. In commemorative Blue Jays cup, I'm sampling the Jesse Barfield juice for this podcast. What a weekend it was on our old show on that network. I always forget the name of that place. RDS? No, that was the French one. Anyways, I had a show on it, and we do this like a wide world of sports kind of thing where we look at darts from Europe or whatever we wanted to make fun of. And one of the clips of Jay and I first when we got paired together, I thought I'm on the big time. This is going to be my saying. So the show starts and I'd say, "What a weekend it was." And I look back and I'm like, I was such a maroon. So bad. And you see Garth Orge behind me. So he's on my list of dream guests. He was the first dream guest to show up. So, Joe Tilley, you must have interviewed Garth Orge over the years.
You know what? Way back. Well, we're talking like 1985, 86.
Yes.
You know, reporting
my favorite
back in
Blue
the day.
Jays team of all time is the 1985 Blue Jays.
Right. And well, Rance Mulliniks and Garth Orge, the third base platoon system that they had, which worked out
and
so
they
good
got
for the
along.
Jays.
That's what I asked Garth. I'm like, whenever Rance would play, I'd be so mad because that meant you weren't playing. And I'm like, did you like each other? He said, we had the best relationship you would ever have. I'm like, okay, that makes me not dislike Rance like I used to.
Well, and there's also Ernie Witt and Buck Martinez just before that. So the Jays Bobby Cox used to love that platooning thing, and it worked for him, right? Okay, so you've during the Olympics we saw more of Dan O'Toole than any Olympic athlete. Even here, in Mexico, I'm watching the CBC feed, and oh my God, every 2 minutes we got this Riverbet commercial going, like a variety of them.
Bet Rivers.
Bet Rivers. Sorry, Bet Rivers. And let's see if we can't run some of the viz from that Bet Rivers. Do we have any of that?
Winter Sports Explained with Dan O'Toole.
Today, we're talking luge. Otherwise known as middle-aged guy tries not to break anything. I don't know much about luge, but I do know that with BetRivers.com online sportsbook, with live streaming and award-winning customer service, you can bet online on the sports you love. BetRivers.com. It's a whole new game. I'm glad we brought up that one. Okay, so that one aired a lot, and people were mad at me because they're like, he's going down face first, so that's skeleton. Then I had to point out to them what the joke was. I don't know much about luge, and why are you paying attention to that? We're showing someone tobogganing. Come on.
Yeah, there is a difference. I picked up on that right away. Dan, that's skeleton. Come on, man. Get with it. So, I mean, it must be a pretty lucrative gig, I'm thinking, for you, that Bet Rivers. I mean,
well, here's the thing, Joe Tilley. When my kids saw these commercials, they're like, Dad, are you getting paid per commercial? I'm like, yeah, I should have worked out that deal. So part of the deal was you only have to work 1 day a week because we only do the podcast 1 day a week. But we got a bunch of commercials to shoot. And I'm like, well, that sounds good. And I will give you this. We just shot for 2 days in Toronto 2 weeks ago, and we have another 2 day shoot coming up next week. So when this live betting from your phone goes live in Ontario, April 4th, you're going to see a lot of me.
And you'll be making the big coin there because you'll negotiate that by spot deal, right?
Well, if it was an ACTRA set, I would have got paid like residuals and stuff, but it's not. So I'm like, well, can we do that now? They're like, no. I'm like, okay.
All you want is 10% of every bet made on Bet Rivers, I should say.
Oh yeah. Or if I got like, I want 1 cent from every bet, that would add up. Because I know someone who their father created Interact, and I've never asked them this, but the rumor is he and his family get 0.001% of every transaction for life. So that adds up.
Yeah, take some of that action.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about just quickly. What do you think about the future of this business that we used to be part of this television broadcasting business? And is it
We're
going the
part of
way
the
of the dodo
future.
bird? Yeah. I think this is it here, right? Yeah.
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 What I tell now to aspiring broadcasters is, okay, broadcast school, yeah, it still has its qualities. You can learn how to work a camera, you can learn how to write, you can learn how to become a broadcaster. But also, you don't really need to go to broadcast school because a lot of maybe potential employers or the potential employer might be staring at you in the mirror, and that's yourself. If you can create content in today's day and age, then that is what people want right now. And that's what advertisers want, because traditional advertisers are not going traditional routes, and they're sponsoring things on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. And I always point to this as well. My children, if I gave them $100 each to find a show on cable TV, I would never have to hand over that $100. So cable providers and cable stations, I hope they see this trend that anyone currently under the age of 20 will never be buying cable TV. So they've got to find a way to keep the operation going, to keep the motor running without these people, because I have never seen the figures, but year after year, the amount of people still buying cable TV packages has to be dropping in the hundreds of thousands, because you see
New
Amazon getting
subscribers?
it. Yeah, because this right
Forget it.
now, sports TV is the biggest reason for people having cable TV, but Amazon's getting in on that. Then you're going to have YouTube getting in on that. Facebook did baseball games, Facebook Live. So all of these players are going to say, well, there's still these people hanging on to the old way of doing things. We still need to get them into our corner. So it's scary if you're a new young broadcaster. If you're a current broadcaster, it's scary because I'm sure a lot of people wake up every day and they're like, is my security pass still going to work at the gate today?
Yeah. That's exactly. And you said under 20. I would up that number to probably under 35, maybe 40. I mean,
Yeah.
my kids
The
are certainly
cable
a lot
bill,
older than your kids.
basic cable, I think the minimum you can pay is like $50. So if you add up, you're like, well, I could get Netflix for that much. I could get Amazon Prime for that much. I can even subscribe to YouTube, all under $50 combined. And
Right.
what are you missing out on? Well, I got to see the Leafs game. So crap, I got to keep my cable TV because that's the only place I can see them.
Right. Or find an Android box and do it that way. I don't know. I'm just saying it could happen.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen one of those.
They could be out there somewhere, Dan. I'm not sure, but
Right.
I heard.
They could be.
Heard a rumor. Heard a rumor. Okay, well, listen. You had a great suggestion on your podcast the other day that these networks out there, TSN, Sportsnet, they should come out with this a great idea that they should have their own all-day draft day, or sorry, trade deadline day broadcast. And by golly, they had them. Yeah, they had them. What a great idea!
And I even call it Trade Center or something. And then I see clips that they did that yesterday. I'm like, wow. So they listened to Boomsies. And we did a recap on this week's edition of Boomsies, where producer Tim is our NHL insider. And he gives us a 20-second recap of trade deadline day. And essentially asked him, did the Leafs get a goalie? He said, no, that was it. That's all I'm not even a Leafs fan, but I'm like, okay, they're making a big splash. They're getting a goalie. Didn't happen.
If you're not a Leafs fan growing up in this area of the world, what are you? Who was your team?
Okay. I will tell you this. I was a Leaf fan for a bit. Remember when they used to have the global game of the week?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. So I would watch those, and I remember watching Peter Ing get a shutout at Maple Leaf Gardens. I'm like, this is great. And then Steve Penny for the Montreal Canadiens stood on his head one night for the Habs, and he became my favorite goalie. So that would have been like 84-ish. And Habs games were always on Hockey Night in Canada. So I became a Habs fan. Then Patrick Waugh took over for Steve Penny, and I was the biggest Patrick Waugh fan in the history of the world. So I watched the Habs, and I was a diehard Habs fan until they traded him. So I'm kind of a free agent in which I just watch hockey. Although I say that, but also point to last year's playoffs where I became a sports fan again. So when you're doing sports highlights every night of the week, it all kind of blends into the next night. So when the Habs made that cup run, I became a fan again. My friend Luke would come over to watch the Habs game here at my house. I'd go to his house, and it was just fun cheering with no agenda, because when you're working a late night sports show, you don't want excitement. You want a 2-0 game with no overtime so you can get the hell out of there and go home. So when you're sitting on your couch, you're like, I just want to have fun and watch hockey. And then I started doing a post-game show with Chris Nyland, Knuckles Nyland, after those games.
Knuckles.
So that was a lot of fun. So I am a free agent sports fan. And you know how they say don't ever meet your idols or don't ever meet your heroes? At All-Star Weekend, when I lived in LA, the NHL All-Star Game was in LA, and I was at dinner with a friend, and Patrick Waugh came in, and I'm like, oh man, I got to go meet him. I went and met him. He did not want to spend any time talking. So I'm just like, can we just take a picture? And he even looks grumpy in the picture. So I'm like, waited all this time, and Patrick Waugh couldn't have cared less.
Yeah, I've had a few of those experiences myself, and it's it is
who? Give us one. Give us one.
Okay, so George Brett, the '85 American League Championship Series. I'm standing in the Royals dugout waiting to talk to Brett, and I said, George, can I get an interview with you? And he's nothing, crickets. George, I just need you for 1 minute. I just want to grab a quick interview. I'm working with the CTV, the station here, and I just want to grab you for a quick interview. It won't take long at all. Nothing. He looks right in my face and walks right by onto the field, and away he goes. I had a similar experience with Josh Donaldson, and it's like, guys, there's an old saying. Pat Morrison, my boss my original boss at CFTO, used to say, you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. And, right. At the end of the day, if you're going to be like that, it's going to, when what goes around comes around. And it's unfortunate that happens, but what are you going to do?
I have a quick story.
Just other try not to be that person, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we were driving in the car one day, my daughters and I, and Taylor Swift's song came on, and I said, I still don't know if she's a nice person or not, because I hear a lot of stories where, and I'm not throwing Taylor Swift under the rug, but, or in front of the bus. I heard how she's not nice to some people. So my kids interjected and they said, well, you know how many people a day she must meet? And I said to them, but how long does it take to just say hi? I say, well, what about all the makeup people she meets? I'm like, well, how long does it take to say hi? It takes no time to be nice to people, and they'll always remember that, but they'll also remember you not being nice. So that's my motto to my kids. I'm like, just be nice to people. So that's why whenever I'm out in public and someone stops to have a chat, I have that chat, because first off, if you don't, then that story from that person goes to the next person. Then they're like, that Dan O'Toole, he's a real asshole. So I'm like, I know for a fact, if a story like that ever comes back to me, I would say that is complete bullcrap, because that didn't happen. So if you're always nice to people, you don't ever have to think about, wait, was I not nice to that person? Just be nice.
Well, Dan, I can vouch for you, buddy. You are not an asshole, and it's been awesome having you on the show.
Can I put that on my business card? I need a new business card. Dan O'Toole, not an asshole.
Not an asshole. It's official. And as a guest on Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show, we have some great Italian spreads for you from Classica Imports. We're going to hook you up with our pal Jeff, and he'll take care of you. And also,
Wait, I get
owe you a
something
round
out
of
of
golf
this?
and wind dance this year. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
And I get to golf at
gift
Wind
certificate.
Dance?
Yeah, baby.
Oh
Yeah, ticket to
my
golf and wind dance.
goodness. This
Yeah.
is the greatest day ever.
Yeah,
Wow.
man, it's
Thanks,
gonna be
Joe.
good. Listen, thank you, Dan. It's been great having you, and we'll have more sports when we come back.
More Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show coming up after the break.
Let's get it. Yes, get the cheerleader up. Get her up there. This is how you do it. Give her the mop. Now she's got it. Oh, what a play.
Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com.
Hey, this is Tommy Graisley, aka Tommy Gunn. I love two things, music and sports. And when I want sports, I go to the Joe Tilley Show. He gives me everything I want. It's a great show. Check it out for yourself. Joe Tilley Sports, coming up.
Good night. When I'm working out, I like to wear my Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show t-shirt. It makes me feel handsome and strong. If you want a t-shirt, support the show, click on the link below. Now, back to my workout. 1,761, 1,762, 1,763, 1,764. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Joe Tilley Sports is brought to you by COSA, Central Ontario Standardbred Association, providing a united voice for harness horse people racing at Ontario tracks. Check out your benefits today at COSAonline.com and check out COSA TV on Facebook and YouTube for all the latest harness news and live action updates. Live racing year-round. Go to hpibet.com for all your wagering options. Become a member today, and your first bet is free. That's hpibet.com. Slow play. It's a slippery slope. First you go looking for that lost ball, and then everything goes sideways. There are a lot of golfers on the course. Make certain of your point of entry, look quickly, and move on. Remember, we're here for a good time, not a long time. Find anything, Bob?
Not yet.
Visit moregolf.ca. You'll find everything a golfer could need, from balls, gloves, and clubs, to custom fitting opportunities, training gear, and more. When you go to moregolf.ca to log in and make your final purchase, don't forget to enter promo code JTSports to get $20 off. Go to moregolf.ca today.
All right, my Coastal Switch pick of the week. Last week I went to Mohawk for the 9th race. A pace for fillies and mares. Looked like a good opportunity for Silent Crossing to break her maiden. Phil Hudon got Silent Crossing to the front of the pack right out the hop. She never looked back. Hudon guided Silent Crossing to a convincing victory over the favorite Trophy Bride. Silent Crossing, trained by Blake McIntosh for Hut Racing, $4.50 to win, so I got a little bit of money back. Okay, this week I'm going to Thursday night's 10th race, the $25,000 final of the Pop-Up Series. A pace just marvelous with James McDonald driving was just about marvelous last week, but he made his move just a tad early. It's a $5 win place bet. I'm also going with a $1 exacta box, 3, 4, and 6. Okay, for all the racing updates, visit Costa TV on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Go to hpibet.com for your wagering options. Time now for the Rycom Wrap, sports news that's close to home. Well, they're taking a serious run at Stanley. Let's see how it pans out. The Maple Leafs grabbed veteran defender Mark Giordano from the Kraken, along with forward Colin Blackwell. Let's see how Hari Satari can, well, he got moved away. And gone are Travis Dermott and Peter Mrazek for now. Giordano has been a heck of a player for 16 NHL seasons, a captain for the Flames and Kraken. The fact that he's 38, well, that shouldn't be an issue. He's hoping to be part of a long playoff run.
The past couple of weeks, I think the Leafs are a team who obviously are on my radar as a team that I might get traded to, and one of the better teams in the league. So to be able to be a part of this going forward, and it being my hometown is obviously a huge bonus. But to be able to come to a team that has a real good shot at obviously making some damage or creating some damage in playoffs is something I'm really excited about.
Well, it was a tough loss in Nashville, but it comes off a couple of nice wins, too, without their top sniper as well. Smoking the Stars and clipping the Canes. Austin Matthews returned, scored his league-leading 46th goal. He also hit a couple of posts against the Preds. Mitch Marner scored twice. He is so hot right now, but the Predators prevailed. They are a physical team. They got some bounces. Eric Schallberg took his first NHL loss. The Devils and Habs are next on the slate. Well, there's still some time for the Raptors to take a run at a home court advantage in the playoffs. Might just do it. The Dinos are sitting 7th in the East, but they're only 3 or 4 games out of 2nd. They gave Freddie Van Vliet the night off against the 76ers. His knee might be a concern. Pascal Siakam and Precious Achiuwa picked up the slack for a 5-point win. Only 2 losses in 9 games. 1 loss against the Lake Show in overtime in Los Angeles. 6 straight wins on the road before a loss in Chicago. Now, the Raps are still a very scary team. It was a busy offseason for the Blue Jays, and I really like what I'm seeing here, folks. This past week, they bolstered the hot corner, landing third baseman Matt Chapman from Oakland for infielder Kevin Smith and pitchers Gunnar Hoglund, Zach Logue, and Kirby Snead, all expendable. Chapman is 28 years old, a 3-time Gold Glover who has a bit of pop. He's also said to be a great guy in the clubhouse, and he inked a 2-year deal worth $25 million. All right. Toronto FC got off the schneid. Jonathan Osorio got the winner as the Reds slipped past DC United 2-1. FC has a win, 2 losses, and a draw on the season. A massive night coming up for one of the greatest players in NLL history. Yes, when Dan Dawson takes the floor at First Ontario Centre in Hamilton to face the Georgia Swarm, he'll set a league record for games played. He is also poised to set a new mark for career assists. Both records will almost certainly fall. The 40-year-old Oakville native has won numerous titles and is a former NLL Champions Cup MVP. Canadians are making some noise on the links. Brooke Henderson was second in the LPGA Tour standings as we speak. Adam Hadwin was 7th in the Valspar last week. He's having a pretty good season. Okay, so let's have a look at our shot of the week. We're going to go with number 6 at El Tigra. And this effort by PC set up a birdie.
God damn it. 4!
That is a good looking shot. Onto the green, a little bit long, but it's going to be a putt.
I can see it.
Yes, indeed.
Knocker.
That it was. That it was.
That's nice, huh?
Yeah.
Today's environmental tip: use less electricity. Power plants release harmful chemicals, including greenhouse gases. The process of extracting fossil fuels from the earth destroys natural habitats. Water usage to provide steam and cooling contributes to water shortages.
Rycom, passionate people who turn complicated business problems into simplified technology solutions. For public and private sector real estate, properties, portfolios, and enterprise customers. Optimize and future-proof smart buildings from the ground up. Smart tech solutions, the latest in fault locating, base building network design, managed services, cybersecurity, data analytics. Our fault detection will support all smart strategies, define projected outcomes for capital planning, and reduce environmental impact. Rycom, smart protection solutions. At Rycom, we're building a path to a smart and environmentally friendly future and a carbon-free economy.
And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great folks. Reminder, the show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcast, and Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network and Zingo TV. Please like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. It's free. And all of our past great shows and clips are on YouTube. You can check that out. Once again, thank you to Dan O'Toole for being on the show. Thank you for watching, and join us next week when two other great broadcasting legends, Rod Black and Ken Shaw, drop by for a Masters preview. We'll see you then. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by
Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today, and let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678.
Do you want to buy or sell a home? Could 31 years of real estate experience help you? Why not speak to an amazing team that loves to overpromise and overdeliver? Aldo has a tremendous team of experts on staff. They are committed to making your next real estate transaction smooth and comfortable. Call 416-GET-ALDO or visit getaldo.com.
Brought to you by MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business consulting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the needs of our clients in the private, public, and non-for-profit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to doing business and personalized strategies to help people and organizations succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Toronto, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, our team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca to learn more.